What's going on, guys? Today I wanted to bring you another 2014 WCQ hat format combo and coaching guide. Today the deck I want to talk about is going to be Mythic Plant Rulers. I had a lot of people asking about this deck, and I had posted a deck profile on this deck that if you haven't seen that video yet, in order to understand what all the cards in this deck do, you're gonna want to check out that deck profile. I'll have it linked in the description, so if you haven't checked that out, pause this video, go check that out, and then come back to this video. And for this video, I want to kind of explain how this deck functions, how it's different from Mythic Rulers specifically, and other Dragon Ruler decks, and kind of go over some of the cool combos that this deck can actually do, because it has a lot of options, and it can be a little more skillful to actually play out your turns and things just because you have so many options and the different interactions that this deck has. So anyways, guys, let's get straight into this deck, and as I go on, I'll kind of explain how it works. So I think a big key difference with this deck versus Mythic Rulers is, rather than the rulers being the main center point for the deck, it's actually the plant engine that tends to get the better part of this deck. And the reason I say that is because most of the time, the rulers are actually just going to be used as supplementary engines, so you'll take advantage a lot more of the secondary effects, the pitching from hand effects, than you will actually comboing off with the rulers. Obviously, they're really good and still going to be used, but because this deck plays so many different attributes, you actually can really take advantage of their good effects when pitching them with their same attribute. For example, Redox being able to pitch it and an earth monster to summon back a monster in grave is really strong, and Title being able to pitch it and a water monster to send a monster from deck to graveyard is really good, especially because this deck is obviously a combo deck, so it can do some crazy things with Soul Charge, and I do want to go over that. But just to kind of show you some of the attributes, obviously we have our big three plant monsters here. That's a wind, a earth, and a water, and we're playing multiples of Titanial, but only 1 and 1 in this specific build for this deck. But even on top of that, we have more earth cards, for example, in our Crane, our Dandelion. We have more fires, obviously, in things like Lone Fire. We have winds in Spore. Even looking at the main deck a little bit more, we have earth for our Tree Dragon, wind for our Debris, more earth for Card Trooper, Flamevel Guard as a fire target, water dragons, just so many different attributes. And I think, as I said, the main thing that people get confused with this deck is just the plant engine. So I want to start off by showing you guys a combo with just Lone Fire and Soul Charge and what it can do in this deck specifically. So let me just move these to the side and we can get started on that. Again, you do want to know what all these cards do. I'll briefly explain it throughout the combo a little bit, but in general, make sure you check out that deck profile. So if we start with Lone Fire and Soul Charge, obviously the main thing you want to start with is just normal summoning Lone Fire Blossom. You're going to activate the Lone Fire. If they max CU here, rather than going into another copy of Lone Fire, it's nice that you have your big plants here, because then you can just summon out any of these. If it's game 1, sometimes you might want to go for just a Titanial in case you have other back row and other things. Then you're able to protect it if they try to target it. But usually, if they max you here, going for the Chirumi is probably the best option, simply because this one has a really neat effect where if it's destroyed in your possession by an opponent's card by battle or card effect, it will float into another plant monster, and the fact that it has 2800 defense is already hard for them to get over. And like I said, in this combo, you do have Soul Charge, so your Soul Charge will be your follow-up if they max you here, and you don't have to worry about dying. But even if they out this, you can float that into one of your other big plants, or you could even float into your second copy of Lone Fire Blossom so that if they can't, if they only have enough to get over this, you have this as follow-up and you still have your soul charge. But that's obviously worst case scenario. We're talking no interruptions here. So you start with your Lone Fire, activate Lone Fire, tribute it, summon another copy of Lone Fire, and from here you're going to tribute the second Lone Fire for a copy of Dandelion. Now, from here, what you're going to do is soul charge and summon back both copies of Lone Fire Blossom, and this is kind of the point where you have a million different options you can go into. And the reason I say that is just because this board can get you basically any extra deck card you want, in a sense. Obviously, besides maybe the 7s, but you can go for 8 synchros, you can go for 10s. For example, I said in the deck profile, one change I would make is swapping out one of the Stardust for a Leo. So this combo can involve Leo as well. From here, you have options. So let's just kind of go through those. You can go Lone Fire, and Lone Fire, keep in mind, it is a once per turn, soft once per turn, and also it can tribute a face-up plant to special summon a plant from deck. It doesn't have to always be itself. So what you can do is use the Lone Fire, tribute the Dandelion, and summon a copy of Spore. And here I'll put a dice on the one that we've already used. And Dandelion was sent to graveyard, so you will get 2 tokens. Just for space reasons, I'll have the tokens down here, but obviously still just 5 monsters on board. From here, there's a ton of different things you can do, as I mentioned, so let's just kind of go down some of those lines. So from here, obviously, we still have our Lone Fire activation, our second one. So what you could do here is use the effect and summon out one of your big plant monsters. Any of these, whichever you want. Usually, if you're trying to end on a decent enough board, you'll go for your Titanial simply because it will stop targeting, as I mentioned before. But another cool thing you can do is synchro with the Spore because it is a tuner and one of your level 1 tokens. And from here, you will go for a copy of Formula Synchron. And Formula Synchron, when it's special summoned, will draw you a card, so now you have an additional card in hand, besides the other, 4 cards that you'll have in hand, because this was all off of 2 cards. Now from here, you have a ton of options still, because again, you still have your Lone Fire, you have the option to Spore in graveyard and Dandelion, so you could technically banish the Dandelion and summon the Spore, and Spore's level will increase by 3 because you banished Dandelion. But I think for this specific play, what you can do here is use the copy of Lone Fire Blossom by tributing itself, and go for a copy of Titanial, as I mentioned. Then from here, what you can do is use the Spore in graveyard, banish the Dandelion, so this will be banished, and this will be summoned as a level 4. I'll just put it right here so that you guys can see. So now what you can do is you have the option to synchro with the Titanial and the Formula Synchron for a copy of Leo if you wanted, but personally I don't really like that option here. What you can do is go and use Spore, which is a level 4, plus your level 3, so 7, and your level 1 for an 8. So these are used. And you can go for one of your 8s. So in this case, I would say Stardust is a very good option. So your board right now is going to be Titanial, Formula Synchron, and Stardust Dragon. Obviously, if you're going first, it might be good to keep the Titanial in defense, just so they can't try to bait it with a 101 right away. And even similar with the Stardust, if you want, you can keep it all in defense. So here you have 1 extra card in hand, targeting protection and destruction protection. And even if they out one or the other, like they have a, say, a dark hole and you're forced to use this, you still have the targeting protection. And the one thing you have to keep in mind is formula does have its quick synchro effect. So what you're able to do is at any point you can use, I think it's just during the main phase though, you're able to use the formula synchron and either of your 8s and go for a copy of Leo. So say you get rid of both of these, you now have Leo and Stardust, which Leo is a very difficult card for a lot of decks to out. Or if you want to do vice versa, you can get rid of the Stardust and the formula and go for your Leo here. So that's a really cool option you can do with that as well. But let's see some of the other options you can do. Lone Fire and a copy of Soul Charge. You can even just go for all 3 of the big ones by using the effect, tributing it, summoning Lone Fire, and summon any of your 3 that you want to go for. So let's go for this one first, because I think this is usually the best option to go for first, just because it has the floating capabilities. From here, you could Soul Charge, summon both of these, tribute both, and summon your other 2. So with a board like this, you have the Cherubin, which they have to attack first before attacking these. You have targeting protection by tributing a plant, and you have this, which makes so your other plant monsters can't be destroyed by card effects. So this even is a hard board to out, and if you really wanted to, you could even, say, overlay both of these, or any 2 of your choice, and go for something like Felgran. And again, this is just some of the weaker boards here. I think some of the more combo boards are better, but it really just comes down to the rest of your hand and, you know, what hand traps your opponent has. But that is another cool little interaction there. But let's go back to what I was saying before. Another combo type variation you can do with Lone Fire and Soul Charge. So summon Lone Fire, do the same play, you know, Lone Fire into Lone Fire into Dandelion. And then from here, obviously you used your Soul Charge. And here, again, you just have so many different options on what you can do. A lot of the times the best play to do, though, is to use the effect and tribute your Dandelion, summon your Spore, and get your 2 tokens. But from here, again, you could simply synchro with these, go for your formula, draw a card, and then here you can do a little bit of variation because you're able to use the Lone Fire as well to, say, tribute your token, and the token can go for, say, another one of your bigger ones. So here we'll go for Titanial again. Again, it could be really any of them. And here you could banish, say, Dandelion, summon the Spore, and this is a level 4. So what you can do here is go, and if you really wanted to, you could just go straight into a 10, because this is a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Or, again, if you have Dragon Rulers or something, you could synchro with these for a 7, and then, you know, if you have other things in grave, you could bring back a Dragon Ruler and make, say, a Draco Sack or something. Now, besides your big flashy combos, obviously if you open Soul Charge Lone Fire every single time, you might just be the greatest player alive, but a lot of times you won't open just that. So it's important to know some of the more niche, little small interactions that are actually really strong with this deck, and a lot of those come down to the cards you see here. Sometimes you do just have to play dragons as best you can, so cards like Card Trooper that get your mills going is really strong, and if you see a Soul Charge, well then you're really lucky and you can do those type of things. But other combos are going to involve just small interactions. So to talk about a few of those, obviously, you know, in my build, I'm only playing 2 Water Dragon and 1 Tree Dragon. But if you're lucky enough to open this, obviously these are known to just normal summon this, special summon because you control an earth, use the earth effect, copy the water, and you can then overlay these into a copy of Felgrand. Another cool thing is if you, say, have a title in graveyard and you're able to special it and then normal summon the Mythic Tree Dragon, or even if you had to Soul Charge into it, this can copy any Water Dragon monster and make its level the same, so you can use this with Title and overlay both and go into something like a Dracosac or into something like a Big Eye and just make a rank 7 that way. Other interactions you have, for example, with Lonefire and Mythic Water Dragon, is just being able to summon Lonefire, tribute it, summon the Cherubime, and then because you have an Earth, summon your Water Dragon and overlay these, and this is another way to get into a copy of Felgrand or one of your other rank 8s. There's genuinely just so many different plays you can do with a copy of Lonefire and a copy of Mythic Water Dragon. Another cool thing you can do is, obviously, if you have Card Trooper in graveyard and a Debris Dragon in hand, or even, something along those lines, a cool thing is being able to summon Debris Dragon, summon back Card Trooper, and obviously this effect is negated, but it's a cost, so you can use it and mill 3, and then if you need to do something like make Black Rose and blow up your opponent's board, that's really strong. Other cool interactions you have are, depending on what the rest of your setup is, simply having Crane and something like, for example, a Dandelion in graveyard, you're able to say summon the Crane, summon the Dandelion, overlay these, and depending on if you've already used your copy of Spore, you could go for, say, a Leviair, or if you've banished cards with the Dragon Rulers, you can detach and summon back, or you could go, in this specific case, for a copy of Malaya the Trees, which you can detach one and Foolish a plant monster or summon back a plant monster. So if you use this, you could say bring back a Lonefire in graveyard to get the effect. You can bring back any of your big plants, for example, commonly something like Titanial that usually ends up tributing itself to negate something. You can bring it back and it's a big body, plus it still has its targeting negate. And in this exact case, if you bring back Titanial and say you detach the Dandelion, you'll have 2 tokens, so you'll be able to get the negate with this, which is really strong multiple, because you'll have 2 tokens and then plus itself, which is really cool. There's even cases where you would detach the Dandelion and send a copy of Spore, and now, Dandelion's going to give you 2 tokens, and you have the Spore that can banish a plant and summon itself, and then you can do synchro plays and stuff. It really is just one of those decks you have to toy around with a bit, and it also just kind of comes down to what the rest of your hand is, and that's why I say these are the main cards that you really need to worry about when playing this deck, is just the plant engine. And then obviously if you see cards like Soul Charge, you're really well off, or if you see obviously your different Dragon Rulers and things, you want to know how to play out those type of hands too. The deck also obviously has draw power, it has wing blasts and things. You need to remember that a lot of the decks in this format are a little slower, so you don't necessarily need to try to put up the biggest board every single turn, and you don't need to worry about getting OTK'd and losing the duel so quickly. Obviously, there are decks in the format that can do that, but just knowing how to manage your resources and also just the small interactions and playing through boards and just utilizing a lot of your bigger extra deck monsters is really key. So I think one good thing to do with this deck is simply to shuffle it up and play out some of the hands before. And also, I know extra deck space is very tight for this deck, so see which lines you like the best and which extra deck monsters you like the best, and make sure to include the ones that come up the most. And maybe you don't need to play some of the ones that are super, super niche. It's really just up to player preference on what else you want to play. And yeah, so that's basically it. If you guys enjoyed this video, definitely leave a like on it, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell to get notified anytime I put a new video out. Share this video with your friends, or if there's other videos you want to see in the future, let me know in the comment section. And anyways, guys, I will see you in the next video.